and there is no argument that he is extraordinary in this regard. His performance places him in the 99.5th percentile of all income earners in America. But he is also responsible, in part, for making other decisions for his household. He buys the motor vehicles and financial advice. He also makes investment decisions, but neither he nor his wife does any budgeting for the family. Mrs. South is responsible for buying the family's clothing. In 1 year, she spent about $30,000 on clothes for herself and her family. She also contributed significantly to the decision to spend more than $40,000 for country club fees and related expenses. Both decided to spend $107,000 per year in mortgage payments. Most UAWs will tell you that their big mortgage helps reduce their taxable income. Of course, if the Souths keep saving money this way, they may never be able to retire. Often people who purchase expensive homes and automobiles are criticized for their extravagant lifestyle. But at least homes, in most cases, hold their value, if only in a nominal sense. Even automobiles hold some value for a few years after they are purchased. Large allocations for homes and automobiles can have a dampening effect on wealth building, but again, at least you can trade up, out, or down with such items. There are worse culprits. How much is the South's $30,000 clothing purchase that they made last year worth today? How much will the $7,000 vacation they recently took be worth tomorrow? How much value is there remaining from the more than $40,000 they spent last year for country club-related expenses? Add to these gourmet restaurant patronage, maid services, tutors, lawn care landscaping services, decorating consultants, insurance, and more. The South's consumption habits are related to the fact that they have no centralized control over their expenditures. Much of their consumption is a function of independent action in this household drama. This is not the case in the North household. Drive North and his wife both play active roles in budgeting and spending. They plan together and consult with each other regarding expenditures. We will detail their system. But first, let us examine the South's situation. Mrs. South is responsible for purchasing a wide variety of products and services for her household. She did not consult with anyone before spending $30,000 for clothing last year. She does her thing, and her husband does his. She has her set of credit cards, and he has his. Mrs. South is a particularly ardent patron of upscale department stores. These include Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Lord & Taylor. She carries credit cards for each of these stores. In addition, she and her husband hold a MasterCard Gold and a Visa Preferred card. Drive South also has the American Express Platinum card. What's the problem? Often Dr. and Mrs. South have little or no idea what their counterpart is buying or how much each is spending. This is especially true for soft goods and intangibles such as clothes, gifts, and entertaining. Both are susceptible to solicitations from everyone, from store clerks to financial advisors, from automobile salesperson nailed to credit officers at banks. If you were one of these people, who would you call? Who would you keep abreast of new product and service offerings? Who would you advise about a special showing of the latest fashions and motor vehicles? Why does Mrs. South spend so much money? In classic UAW fashion, her husband has encouraged her to do so. He was the product of a high-income producing, indulgent set of parents. He, in turn, has given his wife almost a blank check when it comes to shopping. And, of course, the Souths associate with other hyper-consumers. But there is something she and her husband don't know. They are unique. They are not typical consumers. No one ever told them that most people in their income bracket, including the Norths, never spend money like the Souths do. Unfortunately, the Souths never learned about the prodigious accumulators of wealth. The Norths are very different from the Souths in their spending behavior. Both Dr. and Mrs. North come from backgrounds of frugality and thrift. Throughout their marriage, they have communicated with each other about resource allocations. Their budgeting system is basic to their controlled consumption lifestyle. Unlike the Souths, the Norths own no credit cards for upscale department stores. That's right. The North family, whose net worth is more than 18 times that of the South's, $7,500,000 versus $400,000, holds no cards from Neiman Marcus or from Saks Fifth Avenue or from Lord & Taylor. They are only special occasion shoppers at such stores. Almost all of their household purchases are placed on one central credit card, a Visa Preferred card. Both their purchases are listed on one single statement each month. Each month, they determine how much remains to be allocated for each consumption category, and at the end of each year, they refer to these statements to compute their total expenditures for each category. Using this statement facilitates budgeting and making appropriations for the following year. Most important, their planning, budgeting, and consuming are coordinated events. Unlike the Souths, the Norths have one joint checking account to help facilitate the budgeting of items not paid for with their credit card. What if you want a budget but don't like the process? We recently interviewed a CPA who offers a household budgeting and consumption planning service. Mr. Arthur Gifford has several hundred high-income producing clients. Most are either self-employed professionals or bougie NES owners. Some are PAWs. Some are UAWs. We asked Mr. Gifford who uses his budgeting and consumption planning system. His response was predictable in light of the case studies of the Souths and Norths. Only those clients with considerable wealth want to know exactly how much their family spends on each and every category. Mr. Gifford is correct. But aren't PAWs usually price-sensitive when it comes to purchasing services? Not always. They are much less price-sensitive when buying services that will help them control their family's consumption behavior. Do you know exactly how much your family spent last year for each and every category of product and service? Without such knowledge, it's difficult to control your spending. If you can't control your spend, you're unlikely to accumulate prodigious amounts of wealth. A good start is to keep an accurate record of each and every expenditure that your family makes each month, or ask your accountant to help. You set up a system for tabulating and categorizing these expenditures. Then work with her to develop a budget. The goal is to enable you to set aside for investing purposes at least 15% of your pre-tax income each year. By the way, this 15% method is Mr. Gifford's simple strategy for becoming affluent. See our shopping methods. The Souths outpaced the Norths in several consumption categories. During the year prior to our interview, they allocated 6 times more money for motor vehicles than the Norths, $72,200 versus $12,000. Dr. South also purchased a $65,000 Porsche during the year of our interview. Drive South is, in fact, a true connoisseur of fine motor vehicles. He spends little time preparing a budget for his household and even less time planning his financial future. But he has a very different orientation when it comes to purchasing automobiles. That is an inverse relationship between the time spent purchasing luxury items such as cars and clothes, and the time spent planning one's financial future. High-income producing UAWs like Drive South spend a great deal of their incomes on expensive automobiles and clothing. But it takes more than money to acquire and maintain large inventories of luxury goods. Such purchases have to be planned. It takes time to shop, and it takes time to care for large quantities of expensive high-status artifacts. Time, energy, and money are finite resources, even among high-income generators. Our research indicates that even these top earners cannot Have their cake and eat it too. Drive north and pause in general. On the other hand, allocate their spare time to activities that they hope will enhance their wealth. See Table 3 to 6 later in chapter. Such activities include studying and planning their investment strategies and managing current investments. We will study this issue in greater detail later in this chapter. Conversely, UAWs such as Dr. South work hard to maintain and enhance their high standard of living. Often these high-income pro-ducheng UAWs, Dr. South included, outspend their six-figure incomes. So how do they balance their need to maintain their high standard of living with a finite income? Many aggressively shop for bargains. The South method. Examine the activities that Drive South undertakes prior to purchasing an automobile. You might get the impression that he is a tightwad. Most UAWs like Dr. South bolster their hyperconsumption behavior by telling would-be critics that everything they buy is purchased near cost, at cost, below cost, and so on. It is true that Drive South is an aggressive bargain shopper, but he just paid more than $65,000 for an exotic sports car. Is this really a bargain? Dr. South made this purchase at near dealer's cost. But what were the costs of this so-called deal in time and effort? Most high-income generators, whether they are PAWs or UAWs, work more than 40 hours a week. Typically, the amount of time remaining each week is allocated in ways that are congruent with their goals. All too often, high-income producing UAWs spend countless hours studying the market but not the stock market. They can tell you the names of the top auto dealers, but not the top investment advisors. They can tell you how to shop and spend, but they can't tell you how to invest. They know the styles, prices, and availability at various car dealers, but they know little or nothing about the various values of equity market offerings. As an example, contrast Dr. South's most recent automobile shopping activities with that of typical millionaires. On average, the American millionaire employs 4 to 5 simple bargain shopping techniques when buying a motor vehicle. Dr. South does it differently. He uses at least 9 bargaining hopping tactics and strategies when negotiating with dealers. Consider the level of car purchasing knowledge Dr. South has recently acquired that will never pay capital gains or real dividends or enhance the productivity of his business. He now has knowledge about every Porsche dealer within a 400-mile radius of his home. Dr. South also can tell you immediately the dealer's cost on nearly every Porsche model, the cost of options and accessories, and the performance characteristics of most models. It takes much time and effort to acquire such information. Drive South has an interesting style when purchasing automobiles. He first decides on the make and model of the vehicle he wants and the corresponding accessories. Then he goes all out into information seek, ing, and negotiating. It is not unusual for him to shop around for months for the very best deal. In the process, he usually discovers the dealer's cost on the vehicle. This is done prior to entering into serious negotiations with a dealer. Then he telephones all the dealers, his long list, and invites them to compete for his business. He has no problem buying a Porsche from a low-price-oriented, out-of-town dealer. Those dealers who designate themselves as price-oriented are then placed on Dr. South's shortlist. The others are dropped from consideration.